Oh, hello, Thelma. It's not often I deal directly with a character. Normally I talk to the players. How can I help? Ah, I see. The long-promised recap has not arrived. The adventure is over. I'm not sure it's needed. Well, yes, that's true. I'm not really prepared, but, I might be able to give a recap of the last adventure. The players didn't really complete everything that I planned. Maybe I should cover what did happen, so that the threads may be picked up a bit later. Ah, yes, you're right. There were complaints about the last one being too long. Very well, I will keep it brief, I'll hit the highlights, and leave out a lot of the detail. I'm sure the notes that are kept by the players will cover what I missed. Okay, Thelma, goodbye. Nice to actually see you in the flesh. Okay, so as you guys might have heard, the first adventure of the campaign has been completed. The players have been rewarded, and I have been doing a bit of preparation for what they'll do next. So without further ado, let's recap what happened in the first adventure. Right, so let's see. The party was recruited by Gilderoy Lockhart, who asked them to go and hunt and kill the fabled Rarese Trapper on the Water of Rarese, of course, and to have a good look around while they were there to see if they could see anything interesting. Like any good party, they were more interested in the adventure than the reward, but the reward was certainly quite enticing, so as a result they agreed to go ahead and do it. Now, the world they were going to was an Earth-like world with slightly higher gravity than Earth, which would pose a problem for their ship flying through the atmosphere, because their ship can only generate 1G as opposed to the gravity being higher than 1G. The world did have a thicker than normal atmosphere. Also, the world had an atmospheric taint caused by volcanoes emitting radioactive dust that would be blown around by the prevailing weather patterns. And so if you're not careful, you can suddenly find your idyllic environment suddenly being bathed in radioactive particles. The population of the world only consisted of 50 people, but they had recently acquired a 50,000-ton asteroid capital ship for their planetary navy. A ship that needed 1,000 crew in order to operate, so it was certainly not being capably operated by the local population. So the players decided to do some investigation on Mora prior to taking off. Then they discovered that somebody else had been investigating, a reporter 50 years ago had been investigating a story about Rarese, but had died in the process. And all that information about his investigation had been removed from the public databases. They also discovered that recently a large number of nuclear weapons had been shipped to the asteroid ship. After discovering this background, they decided to go ahead with their purchase of their safari ship and name it the Occam's Razor. They then decided to undertake their journey from Mora to the world of Rarese, which was going to be a jump to journey. They arrive at the world of Rarese, and there they see in orbit the Empress Triune. They elected to board the Empress Triune because it was offering docking for visiting ships. They went to the common area, and there they met Bert Phelps and his survey party. His survey party was a bunch of contractors. They had been contracted by Fulcan Industries to survey the surface of the world. Bert and his crew gave some advice to the players about where the best place was to find a Rarese Trapper. The players then flew their ship down to the spaceport on the world and met the friendly locals. Finding out a bit of extra information, they then elected to fly to one of the two locations that they've been told that they might be able to find a trapper. Now, Bert had told them that the best place to find the trapper was in the south, but they elected not to go to the south. Instead, they decided to fly their ship to the northern location. And that is pretty much where we left them at the end of the last recap. So from here on in, it's going to be all new stuff. As mentioned before, the high gravity of the world meant that flying the ship was slightly harder. And that meant that landing the ship was slightly harder as well. and it turned out that the landing was rougher than expected. The starship scraped its underside on the planet, and that didn't sound or feel good to everybody on board. Randall, the ship's engineer, after the landing went outside to investigate. Now, while he was outside, some wolves started to creep up on him. Luckily, the players who were looking out the windows did notice, and with their weapons they all rushed outside to help. They started firing shots at the wolves, and the wolves, suitably scared, decided that a rapid departure was warranted. This was the first of many examples of exotic but familiar creatures which could be found on the world. Creatures that were wolf-like, or gazelle-like, or elephant-like, or lion-like. Pretty much anything that resembled a creature that the players would be familiar with, but adding in some features that made them a little bit alien. Things such as shimmering fur, maybe some amazing speed or larger than expected claws, maybe an extra leg or two here and there, just to add a bit of alienness to it. The party decided to take the aircraft out and see what they could find. They flew back and forth over the top of the forest, endeavouring to find on the ground one of these hidden release trappers. Back and forth they flew until they got a bit bored with the flying back and forth, and so they flew north where they found a radioactive swamp. Deciding that going fishing at this point was a reasonable thing to do, they were snuck up on and attacked by a flying jellyfish whose large, long tendrils poisoned Casey. It was at this point they decided that the best thing to do would be to rush back to the ship to perform medical attention upon Casey. And that pretty much ended their first day on the world. The next day, as they were setting forth, some of the party elected to see if they could track the trapper from the ground. So the party split into two. One group, consisting of Fenn, Ford and Fitz, will fly in the aircraft. The other group, with Thelma, Casey and Randall, who is the colonist who has experience with tracking and looking after animals, take to the ground. Since one group has all their names starting with F, I will call them the F Troop, and the other group shall be imaginatively named the Other Group. Now, the F Troop spotted an uncovered hole in the ground. They landed their aircraft and decided to inspect it. Inside they could see a dead animal carcass. It looked like a dead wolf. When they entered the hole, rat-like creatures started shrieking at a high pitch. The players accurately surmised that the rats have a symbiotic relationship with the trapper, screaming out loud when something enters the hole, thereby attracting the attention of a trapper. They also find that there's a wolf nearby. They fight that wolf off and discover that it was chewing on the body of a dead trapper. They grab the remains to take back to the ship to study. Meanwhile, the other group on the ground had discovered some tracks, which they believe fitted the description of a trapper. The tracks led them to a clearing where they found a covered pit. This probably means that there is an active trapper nearby, so they have a target. They're picked up by the F Troop and they all head back to the ship. Now the plan is to build 2 platforms and place them in the trees at the edge of the clearing where the trap is located, so they can attack it from a safe distance elevated from the ground. The next day, Fenn and Casey spend the whole day building the platforms, while Ford spends time studying the trapper in order to determine what they're facing. One of the things they find out is it seems that the trapper has chameleon-like properties and can blend into the background. The next day, Fenn and Casey are still building the platforms. So Ford takes some time to play around on the sensors and discovers some mysterious communications taking place nearby. The party, minus Fenn and Casey, elect to fly out and investigate what's going on. When they get there, they find that Bert and his survey crew are in action. as they're observing the crew, 3 of them start heading towards them carrying sensor gear. When they get close, the party overhears them speaking in Zodani. Dun dun dun. The party decide not to hang around and rush back to the ship, worried about what they've just found out. Okay, we are running out of time, so I'm going to have to make this quicker. That means I'm going to have to leave out a lot more detail. So, let's see. The next day, they hunt the trapper. It's a very exciting hunt. Lots happened. Lots of combat. Lots of people falling off platforms. Finally, a chase of the hunter back to another underground lair, where they finally kill it and take its head. Now, what they find in the burrow is a wrapper with Zodani writing on it. Ford translates the Zodani and works out that it is a chocolate bar, and Thelma, using her military experience, works out that it is from a military ration pack. They go back to the ship to find that Bert Phelps and his crew are there waiting for them, very concerned about the fact that their ship appears to be empty and no sign of the party. The party reassures them that they are okay and invite them to a party that night. So, they hold a party for the survey team. During the party, they question some of the members of the survey party and find out that, yes, there certainly are Zodani amongst them. One of them admits to being a noble who has defected to the Third Imperium. Despite the intrigue at the party, a great time is had by all. The day after the party, the survey team, having discovered something in the swamp, has decided to rush to the swamp and do an investigation. The crew of the Occam's Razor decide that they are not going to follow them. Instead, they get an approximate location, but elect instead to head back to the spaceport. At the spaceport, they have decided to purchase some fuel, and Ford is going to pay to claim the 100 square kilometres of land, pretty much where they landed the ship. He talks to the local knight, pays for the claim, and is told that he has 5 years to make the claim profitable. The party then stop at the Empress Trioon on the way back. After finding a contact on the crew, they find out that 50 years ago, the Imperial Navy destroyed a secret Zodani base on the planet. They have an altercation with the ship's intelligence officer before returning to Mora, where they meet up with Captain Lockhart. And they discover that Captain Lockhart is actually Commander Lockhart of Imperial Naval Intelligence. They were hired as a ruse in order to allow Captain Lockhart to find out information about what was going on Maurice without having a risk of his plan being discovered by evil Zodani mind readers. Having the party not even realise that they were working for Imperial Intelligence was the best way to ensure that the information didn't get out. However, Commander Lockhart did want the head because he still has his own cover to maintain as a ship's captain. In fact, the crew of his ship don't even know that he is in Imperial Naval Intelligence. So, he takes the trapper's head, and the players collect the 10 ship shares as a reward. With those 10 ship shares, they plan the upgrade to their ship. And that is the end of the first adventure. I might do a video in the future on how the ship was upgraded, but for now I need to get on with finding out what the party are going to do next. Now, as it turns out, I have some ideas of what they can encounter, but it really comes down to what they want to do. So what I'm going to do is, again, find out where they're interested in going, what they're interested in doing, and introduce a plot later. Okay, well that's it for today. I'll catch you another time.